Okay, welcome to this session of San Diego 101, everyone. Beef to Blossoms Land Use in San Diego County. We will get started in just a few moments. Thanks for joining us today. If this is your first time, welcome. If you've never been here before, if you've been here before, welcome back. And a big shout out to History Center members and donors who make programs like this possible. Welcome to San Diego 101 from the San Diego History Center. My name is Dr. Tina Zarpour. I'm the Vice President of Education and Collections here. This session is titled Beef to Blossoms, Land Use in San Diego County with Barry Goldlust. We will have you here with us till just about 1 p.m. We might go a little bit over with Q&A. Our speaker will present his talk, and then we should have time for some questions. A couple of reminders as we get started. Please put your questions in the Q&A function as they come to you, and we will answer as many as possible at the very end of the talk. Please feel free throughout the presentation to use chat to say hello, make a comment, share a story or a connection, but use the Q&A for questions so we don't miss any. If you require closed captioning, please activate it using the CC button on the bottom of your screen. This presentation is being recorded, so sometime in the next few days, it will be posted to the History Center's YouTube channel, where we also have all of our other talks as well. We will go ahead now and get started with Beef to Blossoms.
Thank you, Tina. It's good to be back here and to present a topic that actually is quite new to me, which is the reason why I chose it. Also, after speaking with a number of people, asking them whether they've ever heard a presentation on land use. Specifically, we talk about agriculture and the evolution of the use of land here in San Diego County. So we're going to use the various eras of our history to help us go through this evolution. We'll describe how each of the people who were in control at any particular time actually use the land and reflected their unique ways of doing so and their culture. So we talk about the native people, Spanish, the Mexican era, and the American era. So let's talk a bit about the Kumeyaay. Our native peoples here in the San Diego region, been here for 10, 12,000 years. Although some might refer to this culture as primitive, these people were really quite clever in using the only thing they had available, and that was natural resources. And they were able to find ways to get the most out of the land, specifically for raising food and subsisting for these 10,000 years. In terms of the agriculture, they were able to, they understood that fire was able to, brush fires were able to control larger fires, that brush fires may stimulate the growth of berries, bushes and things that may provide food for them. They understood and were able to build small dams when there wasn't much water on the surface, and they would collect this water and obviously use it to drink, cook, and survive. They also did a lot of trading with other tribes beyond the region as well. So their view of family land was that they took care of this land. It wasn't quite ownership, but they felt that they had to take care of the land that their family used. And so this land was handed down to the next generations who would take care of it. They certainly knew that the land was part of their support in existing in this very complex climate area that San Diego represents. So the indigenous people use the entire county. They did this on foot. They had no vehicles. They had no methods other than their legs to carry them from one place to another. And the climates and the kinds of materials that grew in the various areas were all a part of how they subsisted in the county for so long. So they would go from the coast, they would go through inland, through the mountains, and on the other side come across a desert. And the influence of the Kumeyaay actually goes all the way to the Arizona border and the Colorado River. So you have an idea of where these various parts of the county are, and they made use of the different characteristics of the county. And here's examples of what they might encounter in these different areas and from fish to berries to small animals like squirrels and rabbits, and building materials along rivers. So this was actually quite a lot of advantage to take advantage of as they moved around and ran their life's course. The Spanish era came at the beginning of 1769. 1769 is when the Spanish arrived. They were the first non-native peoples, first Europeans, white people to come to this part of the world. And what they brought was an entire change in culture that clashed dramatically with the Kumeyaay. They brought a new type of agriculture, more of the kind of agriculture that we might be familiar with now. They introduced many animals, cattle, farm animals. They introduced the horse and the mule, so they were able to travel on the backs of animals and not have to walk. The cattle roamed far and wide, and all this land that was used for farming and agriculture were Kumeyaay lands, which they usurped. Of course, the Spanish felt that by foreign missions, that's how they would control the natives and get them to help in their efforts to raise food and carry on their economy. The Spanish also introduced citrus fruits, and especially the olive, and I will talk a little bit more about that. Also introduced by the Spanish were building materials, metal and adobe used for equipment, for farm equipment, for building homes. So the homes, of course, sat on land, and they were a different kind of use of land, but these homes were always associated with farms. So let's take a look at what we're dealing with in terms of the animals that were introduced. Remember, there were no pens, so these animals really just wandered. Well, in 1773, the mission was actually located within the Presidio, on Presidio Hill. And so they had a limited number of acres in which to raise these animals, and also a limited number of people. So maybe at the most, they may have had 200 people at any one time. And so they had this 245 animals. Contrast that to the end of the Spanish period. The mission was located up the river, closer to better access to water and to a larger number of potential conversion people for conversion to Christianity up the river. So there were more than 10 times as many animals counted in that environment, and the acreage was far greater than in 1773. In fact, it was about 50,000 acres, and this is an example of what kinds of crops were grown during the time the Spanish into the Mexican period. And you can see a lot of corn, wheat, and lots of different kinds of beans. What this meant as well is that with the agriculture that was performed by the Kumeyaay actually was highly disrupted by the fact that such large amounts of land were being used by the Spanish for their agriculture. And the diet of the Kumeyaay had to change, and not for the better. All this culture change and it was food diet change was quite detrimental to the Kumeyaay. So after the Spanish fought a 10-year, 11-year war with the Mexicans, the Mexican era began in 1821. And eventually in the 1830s, the Mexicans secularized the missions. In other words, the missions were no longer needed for conversion purposes. The presidios were no longer needed for protection, and even larger swaths of parcels of land were now being available to both the Mexicans, or as they were called, Californios by this time, and the Spanish, the old military officers who retired were also allowed to buy or were given ranchos in the county, and they exercised an economy based on the hide and tallow trade. So as I've been kind of alluding to, I just want to interject the fact that when you get a group of people, there's always a socioeconomic order, and landowners were at the top. So if you could own land, you could reap the benefits of that and have laborers working for you. And of course, the native Kumeyaay were basically at the bottom of this order, and they were the laborers in part. And the other thing that happened during the Mexican era, which is really a change for the use of land, was the fact that Pueblo status was given to San Diego in 1834. What that meant was that they had some level of independent rule. They had roughly 500 people at that time. And the people who settled this town wasn't meant to be used for agriculture, but it was meant to start businesses. And many of the people that moved to this area were the retired officers, Spanish officers. So another introduction of another use of land. So what did these ranchos look like? Well, you've probably seen this slide a number of times. And what this represents is relatively large pieces of land that became ranchos or ranches and spread even further east. The Spanish were located along the coast for the most part. And then when these ranches started to be developed, you can see how far further east. And of course, all this land was taken from the Kumeyaay and even further disrupting their life. We won't go into the interactions between the groups, but needless to say, they were at odds with each other. The largest of the ranches turned out to be what is now known as Camp Pendleton. It was Rancho Santa Margarita y las Flores. So we get to the American era. Now, you have to remember that Kumeyaay were here for 10,000 years. They had all this land for themselves. And then we get to the Spanish, who were here for 52 years, but forever changed life in the county for the native populations. And then the Mexicans, which continued to expand the ownership of their land from the Kumeyays. They were here actually in control for only about 26 years. So now we get to 1848. The Americans arrive. They fight a relatively short war, and the Mexicans are ejected from the area. Now, since the Americans took over, this era, which continues to the present, represents the largest expansion of diversity of land use in our county's history. California becomes the 31st state in 1850. A lot of land becomes available for the Anglos. The Anglos were in control, and there were anti-minority laws, anti-greaser, anti-Mexican, California laws. And although Californians were allowed to retain their ranchos, it turns out over a number of years, even if they could prove their ownership, which the Americans have required, the cost of legal retaining lawyers and going through legal process was such that much of this territory was actually lost and returned back to the Americans. And of course, whatever land the Kumeyaay had left for themselves was usurped by the Americans. We talked about Old Town as being a new use for land. Well, here's another town, a new town beginning with Alonzo Horton in 1867, and utilizing a good deal of that Pueblo land, which was attached to Newtown or Old Town when it became Pueblo. And this construction was quite different than what we had seen in Old Town. But what I want to do is just interject this slide, which I've been meaning to show for a while and hadn't the opportunity, of community leaders from the time of Alonzo Horton up through the early 1900s. And each of these community leaders had something to do with modifying land in one way or another, but not in the terms of agriculture that we are emphasizing during this particular talk. But this is kind of an interesting way of looking at how leaders did their thing and supported the region. So when Alonzo Horton bought his 900 plus acres, this was very different than Old Town. This was meant to be relatively high density residents, not much in the way of parks. That was kind of incidental if they did occur. But along with that growth, this parcel of 1,400 acres, which we know as Balboa Park, was set aside. So although we're not talking about agriculture in this particular case, we are talking about recreation, beautification of the city. And this occurred in 1868. So new uses for land, not agricultural, but certainly important to the history of our region. So while that's going on, let's go back to Mission Valley. Things were going on elsewhere. If we go to Mission Valley, here's a photo of this Sandrock's Tienda. Anna and Clement Sandrock's were Americans who came to this region, and they opened what was basically a general store in Mission Valley, and I think in the region of where the 163 now is. And they serviced the rancherias that existed in the valley as far back as 1821. It was noted that were at least 15 of these rancherias, and so there was kind of a community that was developing Mission Valley based on agriculture. As we look a little further, we can see the development of dairy farms. Here's one about 1910 that was built in the valley. 1890 of this view of several farms amongst the river in this big floodplain. So that was one of the challenges, of course, having businesses in the valley. And here's another example of a dairy farm, Allen's Dairy Farm, which actually had a road that went from their farm up the hill into Mission Hills. Just above the valley, we see an ostrich farm. Now, this ostrich farm is Bentley's ostrich farm. It was an independent farm, but it was also an adjunct to the small zoo that they had in Mission Cliff Park along Adams Avenue. And they did sell plumage, and they sold eggs, but part of its function was to be there for children and for the zoo. So things were happening elsewhere other than downtown. Now we can get back to talking a little bit about some of the crops. We'll talk about three of them in a historical setting. Here's a photo from a collection, and the indication is that it's a farmhouse with olive trees, 100 or 120 years old, and this property is actually Mission San Diego land. So the owner likely rented this land, a small part of it, and this photo was probably from about 1900, and the olive business was not a business at that time, but there were quite a few people interested in growing olives and trying to make a business out of that. The olive economy, if you will, lasted into the mid 1920s, and probably was replaced because of the lucrative other crops that people were raising. But this is quite an interesting photo and setting. More olives. Well, yes, Frank Kimball, if you recall, the founder of National City in the 1870s, grew lots of things and raised lots of things like sheep. And here's an example of his olive orchard. Now, he did a great, he was involved in a great many endeavors. The olives were one of them. He also produced so many olives that he had to build an olive oil mill, but he also grew a lot of other products in conjunction with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And so one of his main influences in terms of agriculture in the region is he used the train system. He carried his produce to other regions. He made San Diego visible in terms of agriculture. It was very important. And this was, of course, followed up with the expo in 1915, which tried to celebrate the wonderful land and how viable it was for agriculture. And also, Kimball wasn't the only one. Here's just an example in Spring Valley, Helix Olives, another company that was involved in that endeavor. All the olives and the olive farms that were available basically started with cuttings and olive grows. We had a local business. It was a canning and a distributing company, Klauber Wagenheim. In the late 1890s, they canned and had their own labels for some products. Here's a label, Silvergate, and you can see the very interesting artwork on this label. And they canned a lot of food, and they delivered this food not only locally but outside the region. Here's one of their local deliveries. The sign that says Point Loma pineapples, and it's a Klauber Wagenheim. If you can't read that, so there were distribution systems. There were a number of crops being raised, and agriculture seemed to be here for good. Let's take a look at land use. We don't know, haven't talked about the acreage, the size of the agricultural component. So the county has 2.7 million acres. If you took all the residential areas, about 350,000 acres as of 2010. Parks and military, this number is almost entirely parks. The military was perhaps 150,000 acres of that. So it was a relatively small chunk of this 1.2 million parks and military. So it's interesting to compare the residential to parks and see how much more land is devoted to recreation. And here's the agriculture. And this is one part of the agricultural land. There are several categories of land, and this one was a land of local importance, which is the largest component. At this point in 2010, it was 124,000 acres. It's more likely about 150 now. So let's see how lucrative and prosperous our agricultural economy actually is. The total economy of the county is about $250 billion. quite large, and ranks up maybe in the top 12 to 18 of all counties in the United States. It's the 5th largest industry in our county. It's the #1 producer of nursery crops in California, and close to that in the United States, the #1 producer of avocados in California and as well in the United States. It's the 2nd ranked county in farms operated with women as principal operators. And most are small farms. Right now, the latest, I believe is from 2020, the number of farms that we have are about 5,000 in the county, and about 70% of those are 9 acres or less. And this is more than any U.S. county. So where are the farms? Well, look at the green, the dark green and the light green, and that should help focus this here. The light green is this farmland of local importance. This is the predominant farmland for us, and you can see it's inland. Sometimes it's located. A lot of these sections are located off major routes at this point, and the dark areas are grazing lands. So remember, sum total of agriculture is the crop lands plus the grazing lands, and you can see these large grazing areas are well to the east. So these farms are spread from north to south, but I maybe predominate more towards the north county. The top 5 agricultural products. This is of interest as it tells us the longevity of some of our products. And the first estimate of the values of products was given out in 1927 by the San Diego Farm Bureau. And in this case, you can see some citrus. Tomatoes appear very early here, and some other products. Now, some of these years you'll see less than 5, and that's because if it was dairy or dairy related, I combined them. And if they were plant or plant related or had to do with landscaping, I combined it, trying to make this a little easier to read. So by highlighting this, I want to show that beef cattle appear in 1938, and beef, it goes until 1969 when it drops off the top 5 list. Tomatoes, however, continue to show up and even pop up as late as 2009. It's probably in the top 10 right now of valuable agricultural products. But look at avocados. They start appearing in 1948. So the interesting thing about avocados is that they were introduced in the 1870s from Mexico. And so it took a while for it to get established, but by 1948, avocados appear at the top. And the major product currently, and this was in 2018, plants, cut flowers, nursery items, sod, shrubbery as a whole command about $1.2 billion in value to the economy. So let's talk a little bit about the avocado. Introduced in 1870 from Mexico. Many varieties were produced, but then the Avocado Association that was formed decided that they had to cut back on number of varieties, so they combined many of them. One of them, the Fuerte variety, was a fairly common one. Here's a parent tree in Mexico in 1918. However, it wasn't called Fuerte in Mexico. It was given that name because the seedlings from this particular variety managed to survive a severe frost in 1913, while other seedlings did not. So they named that Fuerte. The large majority, almost exclusively, the avocado type that is being sold from our county is the Hass avocado. That was basically introduced to the market in the 1920s by Rudolf Hasse. They don't know the origin of the seeds, and nor do I know who actually planted what is referred to as the Mother Hass tree. This is located, or was located, in La Habra Heights, just south of Los Angeles. It was eventually it suffered from root rot in 2002, needed to be chopped down. Remnants of this tree are stored in a local nursery there. Avocados. They can be grown on a variety of different types of land. Here you can see in furrows on slope lands. This is McDonald's Avocado Ranch. If it makes you want to sing a little kids nursery, you can go right ahead. But it is an old ranch. In fact, I don't believe it exists anymore. The home does, but this was a major ranch in the Fallbrook area, and a lot of other farms that were cultivating avocados started with gifts and support from the people at the McDonald Ranch. We just wanted to mention the pole tomatoes. Linda Canada talked about this in a recent presentation. The Japanese introduced this to keep the tomatoes from lying on the ground and rotting, so that they could actually vine ripen. So we've heard about that. Another introduction. Okay, I'll get to that in a moment. So that was an old picture of a farm. Here is a newer business off Highway 78. The Oceanside Pole Tomato Company, the Singh family, this is a father and son in their fields with the pole tomatoes growing. Their motto is "on a mission" since 1939, kind of a double meaning here. They're literally almost on a mission. They're right near Mission St. Louis Rate. So this, they claim to be the largest supplier of vine-ripened tomatoes in the area. One other thing that the Japanese introduced was the hot caps. Basically, they would apply paper that was coated with wax and kind of shaped into a kind of a hat, and that they would place these on seedlings to protect them against the elements. So here's a field of watermelons. Nowadays, they'll use large sheets of plastic, probably suspended over these plants. Oh, so let's start moving around a bit around the county. Here we are in South Bay, and it historically noted for the many Japanese farmers that worked the land here. The first one, Iguchi, there was another family right about the same time, the Owashi family. The Iguchis owned this Ridge Acres, and you see they were involved in a variety of crops here in the early 1900s. There's a Koza farm, another Japanese farm. Here's a picture in 1976. And you can see Dairy Mart Road, which was not familiar to me when I moved here. But as I was exploring the area and coming down the 5, I really had no idea if there was a marking that would prevent me or alert me that I was crossing the Mexican border. So in a moment of haste, I took off onto the Dairy Mart Road. So that was a little bit of exploration on my part, kind of makes it a little closer to me looking at this photo. What's interesting also is that 76, they had already covered the original Dairy Mart Road. So Dairy Mart Road used to go this way. So they covered this here and extended Dairy Mart Road in that direction. And to show you that property doesn't last forever, or agriculture or whatever business you might have. The Koza farms were replaced eventually in the 1990s by the International Water Treatment Plant that was dealing with treating the Tijuana River. So an overview of 30 or so the Japanese farms. Here is the Owashi and the Iguchi farms. And down here, close to the border, is the Koza farm. So there was quite a lot going on for a good part of the 20th century. Moving through the county here in El Cajon Valley, 1885, pretty interesting, very large ranch. I haven't had the chance to look at the history behind this here, but it's in those days probably quite a remote area. So the Ames Ranch, the Chula Vista Chicken Ranch in 1914, and here's a Sweetwater Fruit Company, 1899. So a fair number of businesses were out there. Wineries, I won't talk very much about them, but there are over 100, and they many of them are within the I-15 corridor, and some elsewhere, but that's mainly where they are. And so I wanted to get some information on the loss of farmland, because you hear a lot about loss of farmland. How do we prevent it and that sort of thing? Well, I was surprised when this is from the latest report from Sandak, 1984 to 2018, 35 years. And the farmland of local importance. This is the amount of land in 2018. But over this period of time, the net change was an increase of almost 60,000 acres, or about 1,700 a year. I was really surprised at that, and I looked at the numbers and tried to understand more. It turns out other categories of farmland that made up the difference between 157 and 211,000, they all lost a total of 59,000. But one, you can't extrapolate the conversion of one parcel of lost land into a parcel of gained land elsewhere. It doesn't quite work that way. So over the time, the total farmland decreased by about 668 acres, or a negligible 20 acres decrease over that period of time. You look at grazing area, which is part of the total agriculture, you see that dropped substantially, almost 1,000 acres a year for this period of time. So a lot of the agricultural land that was lost was due to grazing land. But like I said, you can't figure out, at least I can't, where the loss of land is converted into a gain in other agricultural land categories. And I don't have much in the way of what's happened since 2018. We have the pandemic. Basically, what factors are involved is the kind of crops that individual farms were growing, their return on investment, their sizes, all that comes into play. So some farms took a hit, some didn't, some went out of business, many didn't. But I don't have numbers to back that up. And from a historical standpoint, a recent article about Oceanside planners trying to deal with a group of developers who want to buy land that was previously used for agriculture. And although it's not used now, it's still the historic nature that they're wrestling with. Should they invest in future agriculture or not? I'll have something to say about the issue of land security in a moment. So we talk about now, this is our last slide, the future use of our land. We've in the past talked about conservation and preservation of land for recreation and habitat. That looks like that will continue. The big item here is agricultural products and how much, what kinds of products, what kinds of quantities will be affected by climate change. Of course, that depends on water availability and the heat and other factors. So this is a really difficult one, and whether it'll actually drive smaller farms out of business. And I just want to again mention this issue of local food security. There are organizations that are trying to address this to make this area self-sufficient. So it's a matter of sharing food, sharing farms, sharing land, whatever it takes, so that food security can be spread throughout the communities of our county. There will be other kinds of farms, we know, and these farms for clean energy production, and we have a few in the area dealing with wind and solar panels. And of course, there's going to be more housing, but the housing may not appear quite the same as our housing that we use right now. A good example is this, the Quonset hut concept, which has apparently taken off in some areas. Quonsets are made out of steel, and steel is fire resistant. So the issue of building housing that is fire resistant is an important one going forward, and we may see more unusual architectural approaches to building new housing. And who knows, maybe things like biospheres, which are self-contained units that people will be living in. And probably more landfills. And you can probably think of other issues concerning use of our land. But at this point, I think hopefully you've gotten the drift of how agriculture has evolved through the decades and centuries for our county. And I could stop here and then we can take whatever questions you have.
Thank you so much, Barry, for that talk. We do have just a few minutes for some questions. If you do have questions, please pop them into the Q&A function on Zoom, and we'll say those aloud for the rest of the folks here, and try to address them as well. We'll pause for a moment to see if there's any questions that come through. Okay, well, I have a question for you, Barry.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of give us just an overview from your determination how land use, just the kind of the major trends in land use in San Diego County?
A trend towards a certain use?
Well, what are some of the major themes that you've seen as you've been doing the research for this talk?
Okay. One of the issues, it's kind of a statewide issue. The problem is trying to extrapolate one area to another. And we know we can't do that, not in California, probably not elsewhere. There's a concern for losing farmland, okay? And I haven't seen enough numbers to suggest that we're having difficulties there. But rather than make that conclusion, let's assume that we have to protect farmland. One of the ways that farmlands are lost is that they become urbanized. For example, developers start buying some of these lands and then they build residences. One way to decrease the loss of farmland, even with the building of residences, to build higher density housing. And there are areas that are doing that, so that the amount of land that we would lose, agricultural land that we would lose, would be considerably less if they increase the density of these expanded residential areas. So that's a trend that I've come across. As far as agricultural products, I mean, you saw what has happened. The return on investment of plants, landscaping, shrubs for decorating homes and that sort of thing, that requires relatively little land, and it produces a great return. The return on land producing those planting products nursery products is, I calculated about 10, was 100, was 10, yeah, 10 times higher return on investment per acre of land than avocados. So even though avocados are very important, they require more resources. So the value per acre is far less for avocados. So if there are any trends, I don't know if that will be converted into changes in the type of crops that will be grown in the future or not. But I think this issue of climate change and temperature change is going to have an amazing effect on certain varieties of vegetation, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then. Well, thank you again, Barry, for that informative presentation about the history of land use covering just about 12,000 years. So quite a bit of change to document there. I'm going to throw some links up into the chat. One is that be sure to visit us. We now have expanded summer hours, so we are open Wednesday through Sunday at our Balboa Park location, and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at our Presidio Park location at the Sarah Museum. Here are some links that you might find pertinent as well in terms of donating, our events, our links to the collections and research page, and past programs. And then one more. You are all invited to continue this webinar series for next Tuesday on July 12th at noon. Next presentation is on the architectural photographer Julius Schulman by Keith York. And I am putting that link here as well if you'd like to register. So once again, thank you, Barry, and we hope to see everyone soon. Take care.
Okay, thank you.